School, taking up a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, major in Financial Management. In this presentation, I will introduce to you the general introduction of approaches to morality, which is the main purpose of this discussion is to present the principal ideas and the issues in the area of ethics offered by philosophers from classical to contemporary times, and it will be discussing the 3-volume series devoted to basic subject matters of philosophy. The first 2 volumes dealt respectively with the philosophy of man and metaphysics. So what is the philosophy of man? It is a philosophical study of man. It is an endless inquiry in its attempt to understand himself and the world he lives in, his dignity, truth, freedom, justice, love, death, and his relations with others and with God. Thus, metaphysics is concerned existence and the nature of things that exist, involved in being where such realities as causality, change, contingency, and the foundation of being was seen to the existence of God. These 2 philosophical sciences are called speculative branches of philosophy because their main thrust is toward finding the true and satisfactory answers to the questions raised. In metaphysics, the question is, what is to be? And in philosophy of man, what is to be a man?
What is metaphysics? Metaphysics is traditionally defined as that branch of philosophy which deals with the most general and abstract questions, such as those pertaining to the nature of existence, the categories of space and time, the existence of God, or the immortality of the human soul. Metaphysics, therefore, seeks to provide a comprehensive account of the world that is proof against the uncertainties of experience. The term metaphysics is supposedly derived from the Greek words ta meta ta physica, which means the work after the physics, or, in other words, the treatise by Aristotle that was catalogued after his physics in some lost library. As is well known, Aristotle's Metaphysics, which he himself called First Philosophy, is one of the earliest treatises on the subject and has had immense influence on the entire history of Western philosophy.
Although the conclusion, they do not immediately set themselves to determine what being should be or what man should be. Ethics mainly concerned with what man should do, with what his action or conduct as a man should be. Ethics is that practical philosophical study that seeks to find some principle or of order to those human actions for which we are freely responsible and over which have rational control. Such deliberate actions are opposed to countless other acts of man, digestion, respiration, the activity of the nervous system. The moral philosopher is concerned with human acts, with those actions in which we are free and responsible. When we say human acts, it is a voluntary act, proceeds either from the will itself. Example of it is an act of love or of a choice, or from some other human power that can in some way be moved by the will, whether an act of the intellect or some cognition or of emotion, even an act of some bodily member as commanded by the will can be a voluntary act. However, the human is not alone in this concern. There are psychiatrists, the theologian, and the psychologists. Each in his own way has an interest in deliberative and free human action. Unlike the psychiatrist, the moral philosopher is not concerned with the analysis of the subconscious motivation of any individual or the exposition of the emotion and feelings that accompany the actions of individuals in their lives. The moralist differs from the theologian in that theologian uses the content of revelation as a source for his normative morality. The psychologist is interested in the measurement and analysis of the emotions and systematic structure of the way men ought to act. The latter concern discovering by the reason how men ought to act, identifies the precise viewpoint of the moralist. John Locke, a famous English philosopher, once observed that man thought creatively long before Aristotle wrote his logical treatise on how to think. The same observation can be made about ethics. There were morals long before there was any science of morality. The student brings to his formal study of ethics in his experience of having made and continuing to make moral decisions. The very fact of his being human gives him practice in the area of ethics. The philosophers presented have furnished explicit analysis of these moral choices. In keeping with the plan of the series, this analysis reflects a pluralistic approach to morality. However, even with the differences that do exist, certain similarities appear in the key positions. Let us then address ourselves to the key issues to be discussed by the next reporter. And that could be all my report. Thank you and God bless.
So good day everyone. By the way, I am your next reporter. So now we talks about the key ethical issues. So by the way, I am a freelancer, BA2 major in financial management. So now there are 4 categories of key ethical issues. First, value. Second, obligation. Third, natural law. And fourth, a virtue. So first, it talks about value. So value is sometimes defined as the object of human desire and striving. So the technical name for the theory of value is axiology. So in ethics, value denotes that the degree of the importance of something or action. So with the aim of determining what actions are the best to do or what the way is the best to live. Normative ethics, or describe the significance of different actions. So for the classical Greek, the life lived according to reason is the value, or the end in view proper to human striving. So the Christian find value in the good life leading to human with God. And for the existentialist, value exists in the authenticity of an individual taking his life and his commitments seriously and with full of responsibility. And second is obligation. So we all experience praise and blames in connections with the actions to perform. So obligation is the claim made upon us by reason that some things are to be done and deserve praise, whereas others are to be avoided and deserve blame. And the technical name for part of ethics that deals with obligation is called deontology. So as philosopher, Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher of the Enlightenment, stated that experience, fact, duty, or responsibilities implies that we are free. In his words, I owe, therefore I can. So Kant was a deontologist in that place the intuition of moral obligations stemmed the very center of his ethics. So on ethical duty or obligation is a word of requirement to follow a certain course of action, that is to do or to refrain from doing certain things. So from this definition, we see that for a person to have some moral right or all that is necessary is that the person's claim be morally justified. So there are some examples of obligation. First is for the students need to turn in his or her homework on time every day. And second, philosophies, you are obligated to refrain from harming any innocent person, or just don't hurt other people against their will. The next ethical issues is natural law. So natural law, from the Latin word lex naturalis, is a system of law based on a close observation of human culture and based on values intrinsic to human nature that can be deduced and applied independent and positive law, or the inactive laws of a state or society. So the term natural law is derived from the belief that human morality comes from nature. So everything in nature has a purpose. Like humans, our purpose, according to the natural law theorist, is to be a good and to have a happy life. And Aquinas wrote most extensive about natural law. He stated that the light of reason is the place by nature, and thus by God, and every man to guide him in his acts. Therefore, human beings alone among God's creatures use reason to live their lives. So this is natural law. And there are some important philosophers who played a role in the development of natural law, included Aristotle, Plato, and Saint Thomas Aquinas. And lastly is virtue. Virtue is the power for moral action that enables man to act with grace and in order in some areas of his life. So, the Greeks sought wisdom in philosophy and prudence and justice in politics. The existentialist stresses courage in the face of responsibility. So, virtues are attitudes, dispositions, or character traits that enable us to be and to act in ways that develop this potential. So, the example of virtues are honesty, courage, compassion, generosity, fairness, and self-control, and prudence. So, virtues also develop through learning and through practice. Then, according to an ancient philosopher, Aristotle suggested a person can improve his or her character by practicing self-discipline, while the good character can be corrupted by repeated self-indulgence. So, now that's all of my report. So next would be the main topic.
Good day, welcome everyone to Philosophy 101. I am Sharon De La Cruz from 7:30 to 9 a.m. PTH class. So with my groupmates, we agreed to report the topic, the naturalistic tradition. So as the first reporter to discuss this topic, I hope in the end you can learn something from our report. So please pay attention and bear with us as we discuss the topic. So let me ask you first. So when you hear the word naturalistic, what comes into your mind? Diba it is kanang realistic, kanang true to life, or kanang real life. So naturalistic means resembling something that exists or occurs in nature. So in the third perspective in moral philosophy, as a worldview philosophical, naturalism claims that the universe does not require any supernatural cause, conservation, or government. Because it is also the idea of belief that only natural laws and forces operates in the universe. So naturalism declares that the world is self-existent and capable of its own direction. So naturalistic ethics is a moral theory that considers ethics to be essentially an empirical science of human conduct, value, and obligation. So the word empirical means precisely that the naturalistic moralist seeks to base his claims on relevant findings of the behavioral sciences and the natural sciences. So ang behavioral sciences, which includes sociology, anthropology, and psychology. And the natural sciences are biology, chemistry, and physics. So the perspective of naturalism was provided by the publication of Charles Darwin's Origin of Species in 1859. So Charles Darwin was an English naturalist, geologist, and biologist, best known for his contributions to the science of evolution. So his proposition that all species of life have descended over time from common ancestors is now widely accepted and considered a foundational concept in science. So Charles Darwin, he established his theory of evolution of man from brute animal ancestors by his principle of natural selection. So natural selection, or describing the mechanism. So from this principle, some philosophers concluded that the survival of the fittest species by natural selection is a scientific fact that makes the presence of a provident and conserving that God are no longer necessary. So in the same principle, the kinship of man with the nature and has influenced philosophers to view man totally in terms of nature in this world. So Charles Darwin saw nature as a red in tooth or claw, or characterized by savage, violence, or merciless. So John Dewey was an American philosopher, psychologist, and educational reformer whose ideas have been influential in education and social reform. So he was one of the most prominent American scholars in the first half of the 20th century. So many naturalists, such as John Dewey, have stressed the rest of man take in his dealings with the world that cannot always be expected to be friendly, and the necessity, therefore, for man to use his intelligence to the utmost. The Greek and Christian philosophers who held that there are no stabilities in the world, na through scientific method, some objective knowledge of the world can be gained. So since ang man and the universe are constantly evolving, so ang naturalists considered any Hegelian to find out all the secrets of the world once and for all an impossible endeavor. So ang Hegelian is German philosopher. So although ang naturalist will justly insist on the function of reason as an instrument for a successful encounter with the world of risk and uncertainty, we must refuse to characterize him as thinking that the world is changing so fast that no stability is possible and no continuity available. So in this naturalistic tradition, the very acquisition of stability and equilibrium is the price of the reason informed by scientific methods. So the naturalist is no sense an irresponsible relativist. So that would be all, and thank you for listening. And for the next reporters, we'll discuss the perspective of key issues.
My name is Mary Rylin Aguilar from Kilo 101, 7:30 to 9 a.m. PTH. So I'll be the one who will tackle first the perspective on key issues. So first is Zuri tackles about values. He says that value proceeds from the reflective analysis of the novelty presented to each generation. Man seeks to transact with nature by intelligence. He increases his own value as well as that of nature by the quality of the solutions he brings in answer to the felt needs in his life. So the supreme value is attained when the intellectual mediation of the challenges offered by the world is successful. The good man mediates the conflict between past knowledge and present novelties. Above all, he does not flee the problems of this world by looking to another more perfect world, for the answer must be found in the world. The kind of knowledge that will derive the needed answers is known as the scientific method, which, since the time of Galileo, has transformed the world in which we live. So, in values, Dory insisted that he argued that the value is derived through a critical analysis of the novelty provided to each generation. He says that man aspires to communicate with nature through intelligence or knowledge. By the quality of the solutions he delivers in response to the sense requirement in his life, he improves his own nature's value. So, when the intellectual meditation of the world's issues is successful, the supreme value is achieved. The good guy manages to clash between the old knowledge and the new information. So here's the small clip where we can understand more about what value is.
Values are individual beliefs that motivate people to act one way or another. They serve as a guide for human behavior. Generally, people are predisposed to adopt the values that they are raised with. People also tend to believe that those values are right because they are the values of their particular culture. Ethical decision-making often involves weighing values against each other and choosing which values to elevate. Conflicts can result when people have different values, leading to a clash of preferences and priorities. Some values have intrinsic worth, such as love, truth, and freedom. Other values, such as ambition, courage, and responsibility, describe traits or behaviors that are instrumental as means to an end. Still, other values are considered sacred and are moral imperatives for those who believe in them. Sacred values will seldom be compromised because they are perceived as duties rather than as factors to be weighed in decision-making. For example, for some people, their nation's flag may represent a sacred value. But for others, the flag may just be a piece of cloth. So, whether values are sacred, have intrinsic worth, or are a means to an end, values vary among individuals and across cultures in time. However, values are universally recognized as a driving force in our ethical decision-making.
So the next one that Jerry also speaks is obligation. So his general principle is that each man is obligated to action and responsibility in strict proportion to the cultivation on his mind and the power of his reflective intelligence. So this is an echo of the Platonic theme that knowledge is virtue. Dewey stresses heavily the needs of every man to grow to ever greater moral maturity and sense of obligation. So he says that the good man is the man who, no matter how morally unworthy he has been, is moving to become better. The bad man is the man who no matter how good he has been, is beginning to deteriorate and grow less good. So for Dewey, men are obligated to the ever-enduring process to protecting, maturing, and refining their aims in living. So for example is isa ka tao is magpabilin siyang kung unsa siya sa una without improvement along the way is not considered as a good man. And ang usa ka tao has the obligation, and it depends on the experiences nga mo grow sila. It has different ways para mo grow ang isa ka tao. That's all for my report. Thank you.
Hi, good day. My name is Narvik Manayaga and my report is all about natural law. What is natural law? Natural law are the standards of right and wrong conditions on live and the cultural norms by which one lives. Who would reply affirmatively are cultural relativists, who, like naturalists and emergence of novel situations, are perpetual condition. An evolutionary universe, and so cannot grant any standard based on unchained human nature can be adequate. And question, what is your own understanding of natural law? My understanding of natural law is, natural law holds that there are universe or moral standards that are inherent in humankind throughout all time, and these standards hold from the basis of unjust society. Human beings are not taught natural law per se, but rather we discover. It's by consistently making choice of the good instead of evil. Some school of those thought believe that natural law is passage of human via a divine persons, although natural law mainly applies to the realm of ethics and philosophy. It is also used extensively in theoretical economics. And next, these are the example of natural law. Natural law is abound for the philosophers and theologians throughout history have different in their interpretation of this doctrine. Theoretically, the presence of natural law should be constant throughout of the across the globe because natural law is based on human nature, not on culture of customs. Next is when a child truthful claims it's not fair that, or when viewing documentary about the suffering of war, we felt pain because we are reminded of the horror of human evil. And it's doing this, we are also provide evidence of the existence of natural law. And well accepted example of natural law in our society is that is the wrong of one person to kill another person. Next is these are the philosophers' perspective of natural law. First is Aristotle. Aristotle 384-322 BCE, considered by the main to be the father of natural law, argued that what is just by the nature is not always the same what is just by the law. Aristotle believed that there is a natural justice of that is valid everywhere with the same force, that the natural justice is positive and does not exist by people think this is this or that. Next is for Saint Thomas Aquinas 1224/1274 CE. Natural law and religion were inextricably connected. He believes that natural law participates in the divine internal law. Aquinas through internal law to be the rational play by which all the creation is ordered, and natural law is the way that human beings participate, and the internal law. He further posited that the fundamental principles of natural law is that we should be good and avoid evil. Next is the author of C.S. Lewis 1988-1963. Explained in this way, according to the religious view, what is behind the universe is more like mind than anything else we know. Its consumptions and has purpose and prefer to things another. There is a something which directing the universe and which appeared to me as a law, arguing me to the right. And that's about natural law. Next, what is virtue? Virtue or virtue ethics is currently one of the three major approaches in a normative ethics. It may initially be identified as one of the emphasize that virtue or moral character is contrast the approach that emphasize duty or rule, deontology, or that emphasize that consequences of actions, consequentialism. Suppose it's obvious that someone in need should be helped. A utilitarian will point the fact that the consequence of doing so will maximize well-being, and deontologist to the fact that in the doing this agent will be acting in accordance with moral rules such as do not unto the other as you would by done by, and virtue ethicist to the fact that helping that person will be charitable or benevolent. Next is what does virtue ethics focus on? Virtue ethics not only deals with the rightness or wrongness of individuals' actions, it provides guidance and to the sort of characteristics and behaviors of a good person would seek to achieve. In that way, virtue ethics is concerned with the whole of the person's life, rather than practice episodes or action. Next is what kind of questions are asked by virtue ethics. Virtue ethics focus more on a person's approach to live that on particular choice and action, and so has less to say about specific courses of action or public policies. Instead, this ethical approach posed broader questions such as how should I live? What is the good life? Are the ethical virtue and genuine happy compatible? What is a proper family, civic, and cosmopolitan virtue? Because of the broad nature of the questions posed by the virtue etiquettes sometimes disagree as to whether the theory actually offers an alternative to the utilitarianism and deontological approaches to ethical reasoning. How does some of the following virtue ethics determine what the virtue are without applying some yardsticks such as provide but utilitarianism and deontologist ethics. Utilitarianism and deontology are the hard universalist theories, each claiming that one of ethical principles is binding on all people regardless of the time or place. Virtue ethics does not make this claim. Thus, those who favor that theory may hold the certain virtue like compassion, honesty, and integrity transcends time and culture. But they don't not aim to definitely universal principle that can be applied in all moral situation. Instead they accept the many things described as a virtues and vices are cultural and that some of our primarily ethic obligation are based on the emotional relationship and what we would people we care about is the end thought virtue ethics and always ask themselves what will be good a person do. And next is how has virtue ethics has applied in the real world. Some employing virtue ethics will consider that what action will most help her become a better person. Virtue ethics arguments will discuss ideals and the motivations of acting. In December 24, Senator John McCain delivered a floor statement of a U.S. Senate condemning CIA interrogation method. He deplored the use of torrent by our country. And next is, what is the main weakness of the virtue ethics? Virtue ethics may cease to avoid some of the apparent flaws of duty-based ethic and of utilitarianism. A person guided by the virtue ethics will not be bound by the strict rules or the duty of abide by the state's legal code, because presumably this then an individual who has cultivated a compassionate personality consistent with the virtue ethics will not easily surrender and friends hide a place in order to avoid having to tell a lie, as would seem to be required by the duty ethics. Nor will be the person guided by the virtue ethics be bound of that China or though the happy majority that appears to be aspect of a utilitarianism. And that's all. Thank you.